Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series. It's PlayStation 1, but it's not. And today we're taking a look at Rival Schools, made by Capcom and released on the Capcom ZN-2 motherboard. It's an absolutely spectacular 3D fighting game, and unlike Street Fighter, it uses a 4-button setup, which is way more in line with SNK's fighting games. Since I grew up playing those and not Capcom games, it definitely feels way more like home to me. And you get this absolutely spectacular anime-style cutscene in the beginning as well. But before we get into the gameplay, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But in the past, I did a video on Project Justice, the Naomi and Dreamcast sequel to this game, and I will say where it got its start, Rival Schools is spectacular. You're going to see that basically the characters are delineated by teams, either sets of schools or some teachers. This game has a very deep story for an arcade fighting game, and if you play the PlayStation 1 version, there is a second disc as well that adds more features, more story, and more things. We are playing the Capcom ZN-2 version right here though. But off the top, this game is fast and fluid and feels so good in motion. It kind of reminds me of Kenju, a game that we mentioned earlier in this series, just with how everything flows around. But you'll see there is a team battle mechanic. At the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a meter. We just used 2 loads of that to be able to do that tag team sort of attack. You want to conserve those. Those are going to get you out of tight situations, and they can 100% turn the tide of battle. And I will say, Capcom used a lot of the processing power on that little jiggle effect right there. That is not how human flesh moves, but somebody at Capcom thought that's the way that physics worked. So apparently in the Rival Schools universe, physics have some very strange properties going on. But all jokes aside, in between each match, you get this story, and basically they're trying to find out who attacked a certain school. Weirdly, versus asking questions, they start a fight first, and then ask the question secondarily. It's not a very good example of what you should do in real life if you have a question. Maybe don't have a fist fight before you ask it, but obviously this is a fighting game, so we gotta get into that combat somehow. And you'll see right there, you can block those attacks. If you get your input in first, you can get the first attack and even avoid that, because a technique is going to be using that loaded charge gauge at the beginning, as you're going to start the match with 2 of them. Now, depending on how many you have, different things will happen here. Basically, it just powered him up. If you have a certain amount, you can have one of your teammates heal you. It's a constant variable in the gameplay, and it's something you need to manage and understand how your team works. But from the kicks to the punches to the grapples, the fighting mechanics in this game are spectacular. Capcom always makes a good fighting game, but I think Rival Schools, this entire franchise, may be my favorite 3D effort from them, because everything just feels so incredibly good. But there are different teams you can play as, including some of the teachers from the schools, and all the diversity in the characters. Each different team has a completely different play style, and you're going to want to find out who to use. Now you will see that players wearing maybe an impossibly short skirt, and there's definitely a little Japanese entertainment in there as far as what you can see depending on the camera angle. So it's just one of those games that was just something they did, so you kind of have to live with it. I can take it or leave it, honestly. It's definitely not a reason to play or not play the game though. But you can change players in between matches. You need to get 2 victories, but unlike most fighting games, you don't actually have to change your partner. Even if you lose, you can still use the same character twice, which is a really interesting mechanic that I kind of actually like. But you will see, even graphically, the models look spectacular for PlayStation 1 hardware, and that's because the ZN-2 just was more powerful all around, that it had that Q-Sound chip on board that clearly was never on the PlayStation 1. The backgrounds look really nice, and they are in a good resolution. Obviously, they are pretty static with just some sort of lights here and there, but you'll see here with Hideo, we called that team in, and we were able to get our life back up and get a full life meter. There's so many different ways to play this game, but what I will say, the game has absolutely spectacular music and soundtrack, so go ahead and listen. I'll be right back. The soundtrack is just really fun, and it's got that nice jazzy sound that I love so much in fighting games. You will see here with this story, we lost this match, and now our storyline is going into a bad phase. You can see those glowing red eyes on our characters. So even with the team you pick, depending on how you do in certain matches, the storyline can 100% pivot. But if you move to a different character or a different team, you're going to get a completely different story. And this is on the arcade board. You usually don't get this much story on an arcade game. It usually gets expanded when you go home to a console. And like I said, if you want to play this game, the PlayStation 1 version is a great version to play because it's expanded in pretty much every way. But when your team does go evil, the costumes change completely. Tiffany here has a completely different colorway, and obviously red being considered a quote-unquote evil color, that's what you're going to see. But you'll see that this game is running at 60 frames a second. It is ultra smooth, and from the development team notes, they wanted to make a 60 frame per second 3D polygonal fighting game because the previous game they made in 3D ran at 30 frames per second. And that's the best thing about Rival Schools, outside of the amazing combat, is that this game is just incredibly fluid from start to finish. Now if you do play it on the PlayStation 1, it's definitely going to take a graphical downgrade because the ZN-2 is closer to like 1.5 PlayStations duct taped together in power, but it's still an awesome platform to play. If you want to play this just for the fighting mechanics and nothing else, I recommend you check out the ZN-2 version. But if you want more elaborative story, if you want more features and other things such as that, definitely check the PlayStation 1 release set. It comes on 2 discs, and the second disc has a ton more content. But this is just an incredible game, and I understand why they would have made the backgrounds a little more static so they could get to 60 frames a second. But the nice thing is with this almost pseudo-infinite playfield here, and the way that they made those background layers so detailed, even if they don't do much, you don't really notice or care that there's not a lot of polygons in the background, because you're so focused on the gameplay in front of you that it's just that much fun. But again, there's so many different arenas to fight in. This game is so colorful and it looks so good. This is just classic Capcom 90s era 3D. And don't forget, they had been working in 2D for so long. 3D was not exactly something that they were well versed in. In this generation, pretty much every company had to learn how to recreate their games in more of a 3D environment. You'll see here with the speed in which you can do a combo and then use a team attack, it just feels so incredibly fluid and unique. If you make a mistake in this game, you're going to get punished for it. But it feels like if you win, it's because you did a good job. Sometimes Capcom games AI, just like SNK, a complaint I could make about both of them, feel cheap sometimes. On normal difficulty, like I'm playing this now, it feels like if I lose a match, it's because I made a mistake. Outside of some of the mid matches here where you decide, or if the game decides for you, whether you're going on the good versus evil path, some of these enemies you'll see there, Raizo took half my life bar away with one shot. These matches you need to get really good at if you want to see what could happen if you actually win, because trust me, it's not going to be an easy feat. But I love how big his character model is, and I love for the era how detailed it is. It just has such a great, unique look. And the best part about Rival Schools is there's a sequel directly on the Dreamcast. It's not a franchise that Capcom's done much with recently, and just like I mentioned in the Project Justice video, I really wish that they would bring this back and do something new with it because it is just so much fun. But Hideo there, he took the loss, and now they're going to end up on the evil path as well. And that's one of the most fun parts about this game, is the story. You actually get invested in what the characters are doing, you find a team that works for you, and you have a ton of fun playing it. And if you have friends and you want to play against them, it's even better. If you have 4 people, yourself included, you can basically get a 4-round going. If each person wins one, you can switch off on the different control sticks. And I really do appreciate that Capcom went with a 4-button setup, just because I'm so used to SNK games. The 6-button, I can totally adapt to it, but I love the 4-button setup that much more, and that's probably why I love this game that much, because it feels so natural to me playing it. And this is just probably one of my favorite games on the Capcom ZN-2 board, a board that I showed you in the intro video. If you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch it now after the video so you can familiarize yourself more with that hardware. But short of that, Rival Schools is just a legit, straight up amazing game. If you're into fighting games, if you like 3D fighting games like Tekken, or to a lesser extent Virtua Fighter, and you've never played this game before, you owe it to yourself to do so. But leave me a comment down below, tell me what you think. If you never played the game, you're going to play it after this video. Short of that, I'll be back next week with an episode in this series. I'll have videos through a week as well, but I won that match. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.